I would just say pay your people. Your people are your biggest asset. The goal shouldn't be to worry about them leaving. I would say your goal should be to keep them so happy that they never would even blink at leaving you. Where companies make mistakes for dealers is their order of operations is wrong. The emphasis that they're putting on different things is not what it should be. They'll bring people in, but they don't have a process for people to follow. They don't want to invest in training. They don't want to invest in retention. But we also need to understand that AI can't function on its own in its present form without people. They're 10 steps ahead of everybody else. They're not chasing last month's revenue. They're looking ahead to next quarter, next 2 quarters. But the companies and dealers that are successful are doing these things.
Are you wasting your time and money on inefficiencies in the business? Are sales down and lead conversion rates are low? Are you having problems building or maintaining inventory levels? What does it really take to win in the automotive industry?
Get the cars that make sense for your store rather than just wishing at an auction. So it gives you that better control.
With over 25 years of experience, Darrell Steed isn't just another industry voice. He's the guy who's out there solving real problems for dealers just like you.
They'll even say in the Pacific Northwest where you're at that it's a tougher market. It's, it's tougher to find cars. The market's a little bit softer. And in the midst of all this, your turn doubled and your profit's up 75%.
Yes.
The truth hurts only when it should. Are you ready to hear the truths? Darrell is here to unpack the hard truths and the proven strategies that will take your dealership from struggling to soaring. And he is taking it all in the streets, with real talk, open dialogue, unfiltered conversations. This is the podcast series, Street Smarts, powered by Smartwolf Consulting.
All right, welcome. We are gonna get a interesting conversation going today, guys, on Street Smarts. Today we are joined by one of my good friends and industry partners out there on the other coast. I don't know if we'll say best or the other, but and she has been pushing the envelope and changing the industry since she got into it with just the process, taking care of people, consumer experience. So very similar to where I live in, but in a different way and given some of that, Midwest and East Coast flair. She also happens to be a passionate and diehard Detroit Lions fan. And what a run they're on. So I'm sure we'll be talking about a lot of things. So Jackie, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on. And as we start all our podcasts, we always like to ask our guests, where are you winning in life? Not your career, but just in life in general.
Oh, man. Well, thank you for that intro, Darrell, my coastal cousin. I would say, gosh, I'm winning in a lot of ways. I landed here in New York City. It's been a long time dream of mine. I started my consulting practice, 5-3 Consulting, at the beginning of this year. I have really been growing my business from the inside out, made a name for myself, met some incredible people this year. And so I would say I've had personal and professional wins, and I live in the city with my three French bulldogs and my husband, and we're living our best life every day. So I'm always winning, Darrell. Are you always winning? We're always winning. We're winners out here.
Everything I do, I go out of my way to make sure that it's a win. Now, Jackie, you have a really interesting claim to fame and climbed in through this industry. Just going through things, and I would love people just give us a little introduction of kind of where you started, how you see things, and why you're so passionate about what you do with 5-3 Consulting.
Sure. So for all the listeners out there, and viewers, Darrell and I met each other in the auto space. I am originally from Detroit, so I spent a lot of time in automotive. I actually got my start in media, so I was placing TV commercials for the national manufacturers that you all know and love, Ford, Chrysler, brands, BMW, Subaru. And it was interesting because as the industry has changed and evolved, so and our media consumption, so too has my approach. I've tried to sort of pivot with all the changes over the years. It's led me into the software space and ad tech and SaaS tools, just really running the gamut. But it's interesting because taking a step back from automotive and working in the small to mid-sized business market with different clients, some automotive, but some manufacturing and distribution, what I've really learned, especially post COVID, is just that we have all these late adapters, business people that have been running their business a certain way for like 30 years. And all of a sudden we upended them and said, hey, you've got to get online. You've got to get on the cloud. You have to break down your interdepartmental silos. Like you have to start functioning completely different and in some cases opposite than they have their entire existence. And that's really been scary for people. And I made the decision to go out on my own as a consultant because I realized that there's a need to help a lot of people kind of manage the process and technology that's going to come with major change. You know, if somebody brings Darrell in to manage inventory, it's going to affect the need for advertising on the front end to bring in more customers. And so I have been helping businesses of different sizes and scopes manage their internal process and help them automate some of the boring processes with new technology. So it's been a whirlwind, to say the least, but you know, that's what we're out here doing. And it's all in the name of maintaining that client relationship, whether or not it's in person, online, and maintaining the reputation of the company, because I think reputation is everything. And I love your one-liner, Darrell, about if the truth hurts only when it should. And I think that's true in what I've been doing. I get down and dirty. I have like the messiest situations imaginable, and I help companies clean those up so they can scale and grow.
You know, I'm glad that you took a minute to just kind of talk about that, because I think that's a great thing to kind of expound on. Is I think everybody knows that customer experience is kind of the key to success. Like, I don't think we're saying anything different. I don't think we're saying anything that's like magical or like earth shattering that people didn't know. What I find it oddly interesting and even almost annoying sometimes is if we all know that this is something we need to focus on, how arrogant and just ignorant we are sometimes to not making that the focus and thinking, oh, we're fine, it'll be all right, we'll just figure it out, not even giving it a second thought to what's the investment worth, or what do we need to invest to ensure we don't have fall off or we can continue to grow. Or for instance, in let's say the automotive industry, turnover is one of the biggest things in the industry. I mean, it's ridiculous. And we sit there and say, okay, we have all this technology, we have all this process, but then we put no time into training or developing or managing, like where we have to invent a position or you have to create a position to be like, this takes, like, it's a full-time job when you start looking at this. This isn't something you kind of go like, oh, we look at it, you know, once a month and kind of figure it out. Not if you expect to have success. So I think that's really interesting. And I think it's a need for companies to understand, like, hey, if you don't have anyone in your store, that's where a Jackie, that's where like, you don't need to have somebody there all the time, but you do need someone looking at it, advising you, guiding you in the right way to where they're experts in their field, rather than you don't need to become an expert. And I think a lot of people are, you know, trying to figure out how they navigate that. So I find it very interesting. Now, I'm curious, where did 5-3 Consulting come from? Is it just because, okay, you're the most adorable 5-3 person in the world, or does it have other things to go with it?
That's my height. It's a personal brand, Darrell. I'm Italian. I'm small but mighty, you know? There's only one of me in this space, and so, yeah, the name actually, my aunt helped me come up with it. But yes, it is that I am 5 foot 3 inches tall. I had a friend in Toledo. He was like an inner city football coach. His name was Mike, and he was 6'3". So his nickname for me was 5'3". And to this day, he has no idea I named my whole company after his nickname for me. But shout out to Mike in Toledo for my sweet nickname. Um, so yeah, it
So
goes way back.
that's awesome. I mean, I love it because one, it's simple, right? Like it's not like you tried to create something that was like, oh, I wanted to do something and it had to take this big explanation. And when people see you, when she says that she is small but mighty, guys, she is being very, very passive about that. She is all the energy and more that you can handle. And if something gets in her way, well, it's gonna get taken down. And when we talk about winning, everything Jackie does, she's over excelling and everything that I've seen her do, which is great. Let's move forward let's talk about just in general. So we've had some things happen in the world. I never like spending a lot of time on COVID because I personally think it was the fake flu. Because when you look at the numbers, flu disappeared, COVID reappeared. It was just oddly interesting. But it did shut the companies down. It changed the dynamic of the auto industry and a lot of industries. You see commercial space no longer being used the same way because of that. And what I think is interesting is what have you seen speed up or slow down because of what happened in like to businesses in general?
To answer that, I'm actually going to go back to a comment you were just making a minute ago about problems in companies, turnover, and not really like, I think, looking into the future of companies. I think a lot of companies are living in the here and now. I'm going to tell you too, in my days of consulting dealerships, I could always tell who my winners were. I already knew because I called on everybody. But I already knew who my winners were. I could figure it out just based on demeanor. So the stores I would go into where a GM, I could drop in or call 5 minutes. Hey, I'm in the area. Can I stop by? And they always had the time, made the time, could sit down, could strategize, could talk about the future, could talk about trying different things. Those were the most successful dealers. Those were the most successful GMs, owners, and that is industry agnostic. I walk in anywhere, and the people running companies that are calm, cool, and collected and forward focused, they have the edge, they have the advantage. They're 10 steps ahead of everybody else. They're not chasing last month's revenue. They're looking ahead to next quarter, next 2 quarters. And I think that's so important in today's landscape because everything is changing so quickly. You have to be nimble. You have to be able to make decisions quickly. And I cannot stress this enough because when you don't do this, and Darrell, you talked about this, I heard someone say, hire slow, fire fast. I don't know if I totally agree with that. But when we talk about having the right people, giving them the right tools and training, and avoiding things like turnover, um, that is the difference. That's the difference maker for the successful companies, right? And what I'm seeing is it's coming as a complete afterthought to people, especially at a time when it is so needed. Everybody's like, but there's all this technology, we can automate stuff, let's throw it in the system and go. And it is so much more complicated than that. And I think the technology has become a blessing and a curse depending on how people are adapting it, what they're doing with it. You still have to have the process, you still have to have the training, you still have to have all of the staples, the foundation of a good business happening no matter the climate. And the people who were able to pivot with change and throw their businesses online and sell cars online and do business online, maintain everything remotely during the shutdowns, they were already they already had a blueprint for some of this stuff well in
Yep.
advance of when the levers needed to be pulled. But I do think it's a metaphor for everything in business, which is that if you're not planning ahead and you don't know what's out there and you're not training your people and you don't have the best people, you are costing yourself money. I don't know the exact statistic, but we've all heard them about the cost of high turnover and what it costs to hire, train, and onboard new employees. But what I'm seeing is all of this becomes such an afterthought to people. They lead with the wrong things. They lead with software solutions. They lead with, sales. They lead with lead gen, but then they don't know what to do with any of that. Or they'll lead with hiring. They'll bring people in, but they don't have a process for people to follow. They don't want to invest in training. They don't want to invest in retention. And a lot of times when I get brought into companies, like we have to go back several steps and do a bunch of work that should have been done years before because it was an afterthought until it couldn't be anymore. And Darrell, I know we've gone into stores together, so I know you see this too on the acquisition end and doing some sales with your, front end groups inside of stores. So, I mean, I would just say, being nimble, pick your event. I mean, there have been several throughout history.
Sure.
I think too, like with the upcoming administration, we're going to see another shift. We've seen it many times in automotive where, different things are going to change, requirements change. That happens constantly in the world we live in. And I think the winners are the ones that are nimble, that are ahead of the curve, that know what's available, and they have a plan. They can look into the future and kind of like come up. You never know exactly what the future has in store, but they usually have a plan. Like if things go left, right, or center, we can kind of follow it and move. But their people are so important because no matter what happens, your people are consistent. So if you have the best people and you've nurtured and trained them, they can move with your business, no matter the direction you take it. And so I just think it's a gross oversight to have high turnover and not work on that because it's a non-starter if you don't have the right people and you haven't armed them with the right tools.
No, I
So
agree.
hopefully I've answered your questions.
No, I agree. I think people, I've always thought the people's where it's at. I think it's, how would you say it? It is interesting to dealers would say, okay, so they always look at it as an expense. And that to me is just very narrow-minded. It's an investment. But the statistics you were looking for a salesman, it's approximately $90,000. That's what, when a salesperson, when you're turning over, that's the potential lost revenue when someone's with you for onboarding and what you spend and then what they end up costing you once they are there. For a manager, it's anywhere between $140,000 and $180,000, and then it just goes up from that and depending on positions. And so when I look at that as like, okay, if I was, let's just say it was $90,000 to bring somebody on like you or me, and it reduced your turnover by 4 people, they don't look at it as the investment. It's an expense. And because they don't look at the future. But more importantly, what I also find just weird in the sense of why we're so very narrow focused on this is, well, if I invest in my people and I get them dialed in and I help them get smarter, better, faster, whatever it may be, then they leave, I've wasted all that money. And I'm like, God, that's just so narrow focused to me because I think to myself, can you imagine in a world, right? And maybe I live in the land of unicorns and candy land. I don't know, is that I hired 15 people, trained them. These guys are all now absolute rock stars. Maybe they want to move up. Maybe they don't. I don't have enough positions, but 3 or 4 of them end up going somewhere else because they want to move up to something else. And, and I don't have turnover. So new positions don't come up available as well as they normally would. And they go to somewhere else. Doesn't that now, the narrow focus is I lost these good people I developed. The collective or the comprehensive focus would be now I have stories of a coaching tree. And I have people to where they're like, wow, this person's going to get me to where I want to be. I want to go work for that person. It creates an immediate recruiting tab to where I don't have to now
Totally.
hire like just the average person. I can be selective because of what I provide. And I just find it interesting that dealers don't get past the, why would I invest in people if they're not going to be here for the long term?
You know what I tell my clients when they say, why should I invest in people? Why should I train them if they're just going to leave? I always ask, well, what are you going to do if they stay and they're untrained? You're not helping yourself. You know, I talk about like the 2 Ps. I don't call them that, but I'm calling them that now on the cuff here. Pay and promote. You've got to pay your people. You've got to promote them, create a role for them if you don't have something to promote them into. But, you know, oftentimes I will talk to companies, they have huge turnover issues and they are scratching their heads. But then it's very easy to look up the market rate for salary. The companies today, for whatever reason, do not want to pay their loyal employees the same market rate that they will end up paying to replace them when they leave. And I just believe that this is a mistake. I think it's also worth noting at this point in the podcast that Darrell and I work with the top companies, so we're not for everybody. But the companies that are winning in today's market are doing these things. And so I would just say pay your people because it's not worth. And I do remember a stat on like an executive, when you get to C-suite leadership, your GMs, your owners, it's like 2 or 3 times their annual salary to turn them over. So just hire good people and then take care of those people. The goal shouldn't be to worry about them leaving. I would say your goal should be to keep them so happy that they never would even blink at leaving you. And that's really easy to do. You know, it's really easy to build loyalty, but so many people aren't doing it. But the winners in the space absolutely are. You know, the top dealers have the same staff for the last decade and they take really good care of them. They incentivize them. When the dealership wins, people inside of the store win with them, right? They're getting paid. Everyone gets paid. You know, when the store's doing well, everybody sees individual, you know, turnout of that. I mean, that should be seen. Don't hoard money. Don't hoard opportunity. And you don't have to, but I do think companies need to be much more worried about folks staying in the organization and not having the tools they need to make the store successful than they do need to worry about people taking off on them. I mean, I think we can all think about companies we've stayed and left and why did we stay? Why did we leave? You know?
Sure. No, I think it's interesting. I'm glad you gave that perspective because that's definitely not different, but it's very valid in the sense of like understanding, like, you know, it's not hard to get loyalty when you're loyal. And, you know, those conditions obviously go from the top down, right? If the owner's loyal to the GM then takes care of his people. But you typically see when that's not happening, then that also changes the culture. And if you make it to where people aren't looking, then you're taking away that fear. And so that's where I find it very entertaining or almost just like, wow, like, why do we keep on this hamster wheel doing the same thing? Is we create the own fear dynamic for ourselves with the turnover because we don't invest or we don't take care of our people or make them like want to come to work. Like there's a dealership down, and I mention his dealership a lot because to this day, it's still one of the craziest things I've seen. And I love the fact that he is making this work and work effectively. But Glenn Lundy's store, 800% auto sales. So he worked for a Chevy store and absolutely made that a monster in a tiny little town. And now he has an independent lot and no schedule. There's no schedule. And he takes care of his people. And you have to try out to be on the team. It's like an interview process, but it's very, very unique. And there's only 2 rules with this company. And it's like simple, but it's where people want to come work because they now understand that he's driven that loyal. He takes care of them. They want to take care of him. They don't want to leave. But how many companies actually do that? How many companies do you see like coming?
10%. And you know what? They're taking the lion's share of the business, Darrell.
Sure.
So I don't even care if people want to argue with me about how few companies are doing what we're talking about, because The ones that are doing it, they're like needles in a haystack. They're not in your big markets. They're taking advantage of small overhead costs. They're able to market online and bring customers in from outside the market, and they are absolutely capitalizing on their people by passing their success on to everybody in their organization. You know,
now I want
culture always will trump everything too. I mean, if you create a winning culture and you hire people that that are a culture fit and on board, because you can't hire people that have a scarcity mindset if you're running a dealership and it's all about abundance. Because the truth is, you can find sales everywhere. It's all about abundance. It's if you pay people, they'll work harder for you, they'll make more money for you. You cannot have someone with a scarcity mindset brought into an abundance mindset culture at anywhere, right?
Sure. Now, we talk about people, and I think this will be interesting because I know that this is going to be about as controversial as it gets because we mentioned technology, and so I want to kind of bridge that with people. So we have this, as people want to say, we have this new thing called AI. So let's just get it out of the way, guys. AI is 30 years old, and if you think it's new, get out from under the rock you've been living. So I actually am not a fan of AI. Now, from what I understand, and I could be wrong, but at this point, there are 4 different versions of AI. There's the one everyone's using right now, which is machine learning AI, which has been around since the 80s or early 90s. And then there's adaptive, and there's learning, and there's a couple other variations of this. But the one everyone's raving about is this machine learning AI, which I find to be absolute garbage. However, I'm interested to see your point of view because the reason, and I need everyone to understand, do I think AI has a place in every industry? Yes. Why I'm not a big fan of it is because we have embraced AI faster than any other thing in the auto industry because we don't want to actually work. And we want to use something to make us lazier to then get cheaper people. And in turn, we're then dissolving or we're liquefying or diluting that customer experience because we want a robot or a machine learning based AI to do it. And I find it very interesting on why people want to embrace that, then train their people, because, and whether AI, some stores are using it with success or not, is do we actually believe that there is AI that people don't think it's AI? Like they're like, oh, it sounds just like a real person. I laugh. I just heard 3 of the top systems. And I'm like, there's not a person in the world that speaks that clean and that fluid, that quick, that has the answers. And so I'd be interested to hear what you think about AI, because I think it's got a need, but I think that we're trying to depend on it too much, too fast, which is going to cause us problems in the future.
I want to preface my response to that by saying Darrell and I did not discuss the topics of today's podcast beforehand. So we disagree on some stuff, but we do have a lot of alignment, and I just want everyone to know it's completely organic. This was not discussed in advance. We're kind of freewheeling it, but I do think we're both out there. So the issues of the day are pretty popping. They pop out for both of us because I agree. If I had a penny for everybody I've met with this year, anybody I've worked with, anybody that wanted to work with me, etc., if I had a penny for every time somebody said, we have this AI, we need to use AI is taking over, I'd probably be a billionaire. I'd be like Elon Musk right now, I feel like, from how much I'm worth. Because this is like the new buzzword all of a sudden, even though, like Darrell said, AI is old technology. I just actually went to a Google conference, an ad tech conference at one of Google's headquarters here in New York. And they were just the woman that spoke, and I wrote a piece about this on LinkedIn too, was talking about how AI, she synonymizes that with kale. She's like, kale's been around forever and it's rather boring, but now we're like rebranding it and we're making it cool and all the kids want to eat it, and it kind of like sucks sometimes. And it was like the best analogy ever Because the truth of the matter is we've been using AI when we call our credit card company to dispute a charge. We've been using it when we call customer service for the airlines, when we're trying to get rebooked on a new flight. We have been using AI, I would say, in the most frustrating of situations when we are trying to automate the client experience, and it just simply should not be automated. AI is a tool, and I think it's a tool just like, if you're a landscaper and you're using a weed whacker, it is a tool. It will assist you in your final result, but it's not going to take over for the landscaping of your entire yard. And I think that's a big mistake people get into when they talk about AI, the fear mongering. Oh, it's going to take everyone's job and blah, blah, blah. Maybe, but not in its present form right now today. Like we need to be, this is where I will pull back and say we need to be in the now on some stuff. And with today's technology, I mean, keep an eye on the future, but with AI as it sits now, I mean, at this conference I was at, they actually had a legal expert, and he talked about a time when a company didn't have copywriters for ad copy that was generated 100% by AI. And the messaging that went out was something for a church, was something like, we'll baptize your kids with Gatorade. And it was kind of funny. And it's good that it wasn't that inappropriate, but obviously that wasn't the messaging. And so his whole point was, from a legal standpoint too, you have to be really careful with AI. It can't just go full bore, unassisted by human hands. Like you need to have people involved. It's a tool that can help you automate a great deal of things. But honestly, even as somebody with a journalism background, I mean, I'll plug stuff into Chat GPT all the time, and you can tell when something is an AI automated message. It's not very good. And so I would say, be really careful. I mean, I would say too, even with robotics and stuff, I've done plant tours, right? I went back to school and I did a master's in supply chain, and I was like at Fiat's headquarters in Turin in Italy. And everyone's like, oh, we're going to have manufacturing jobs. We're going to bring stuff back to Detroit. There was a big push for that. And while that's really important, what I was trying to get people to understand is a lot of stuff's being taken over by robotics. However, you still need people to manage the robots. So it is a skills shift. We need to understand and learn AI, but we also need to understand that AI can't function on its own in its present form without people.
Sure.
And the misunderstanding of that will get people into some trouble if they're not careful.
Yeah, and I think, what you saying that's even more interesting, right? Which just makes me like even more feel convicted to what I think is, for instance, like ACV, and I'm sure other auctions have it, but they're using AI to do like paint meter readings and damage on a car, and they can even listen to a car now and assess certain things. Now that part of it, I think that's a real thing, because like that's a tool. And again, it's a tool. It is not something we can depend on, but I find that to be absolutely captivating of like, wow. Then we talk about, it's talking to people and everything else. And where this is the other part where I find, I'm going to be 100% honest. This is where I get to laugh. I mean, literally laugh and go like, you've got to be shitting me. So dealers never want to give up control. They're like, oh God, no, I'm never giving up control. Like it's one of those things where it's like gatekept. I'm never going to let anyone in my business and everything else. But you will give up your interaction to a customer, to a computer. Like if that isn't the biggest picture of the pot calling the kettle black, of you don't want to give up control and you don't want to be a victim or chained to a certain situation, but you don't know what it's saying. You're hoping, because there is no plan, right? You're hoping that it learned and it's saying the right things. But what I also found interesting, especially being in California, let's just say you have an AI program and it's doing responses for you, and it says something because it didn't learn it right, or it didn't put it out there right, or whatever it may be, because things happen. Like you said with ChatGPT, I use it. I've never been a better writer in my life since ChatGPT came out. But I still have to go over it and look at it. And just like Grammarly, It's supposed to help with all your grammar. I still have to fix things. But if it were to put out a response, or if it were to say something, or it were to go down a funnel and it doesn't do it correctly, you're still liable. You're still liable for everything you put in your store.
Absolutely.
And so I'm like, so now you want to leave yourself open to a possible computer glitch? Like, think that one through for just say it 10 times fast and not try to lose your mind on it. Like, so
I mean, I'm not going to say who it was, but we all know about the security breach that happened in automotive this year. So, I mean, you can't tell me that people aren't worried about this stuff, but you're absolutely right. We've got to assess the blind spots, because I think we look at the big stuff, we're overlooking the little stuff. And I think, again, like, AI is just a buzzword. And so what it's conditioned us to do is see it as all positive, all great, whatever it is. We just need to be using it. And it's like, well, you gotta be careful with that.
Well, and it's funny, like when you say a buzzword, right? So everyone asks me, and I tied this in because, I'll give a shameless pitch on myself in a minute, but is, the 3 buzzwords, right? AI. I mean, that's for the last 3 or 4 years. That's been like everything at every conference. EVs, which we're not even going to get started because holy hell, I could just like destroy
that's a different podcast. Yeah.
That's a 3-hour podcast just on that nonsense. And then we have buying centers, right? Like I opened my first buying center in 2010, 2011. We are 14 years later, and now everyone's like, oh man, I got to get a buying center, which oddly enough, a buying center is the buzzword because you're saying you want private party acquisition, but the buying center is actually the wheel of acquisition, which encompasses 7 different things. But what I find is interesting, as I talk to dealers, they're, with buying centers, with Street Smarts or Smartwolf, depending on which option you want, the do it yourself or with me in your corner. And that's the shameless plug. Okay. So that's it. I'm done. But they'll go, oh, I don't know if we're ready, this and that, but they'll dive into AI and give up all control and be like, oh, we're going to have this. And I'm like, wow. Like, it just shows you like where you think you're going to grow your business. You grow your business through acquisition. That's been proven since the test of time, and that we just haven't put the focus on it. But you'll give it up and hope that you can get people there. Now, I don't want to completely shit on AI. I want to give it a little bit.
Well, I was going to say, for me, it's order of operations. I think all these things are important, but what I'm noticing where companies make mistakes, or dealers, is their order of operations is wrong. The emphasis that they're putting on different things is not what it should be, right?
Sure.
AI is a tool. Just like you said, managing inventory is kind of an inside job. Yep. And I will say, I know you're trying to promote Street Smarts, but you just really need Darrell in your store. Don't do that either. Don't buy his cheap, I can do it myself stuff if you really aren't committed to doing it yourself. Because I do think these are mistakes people make, and then they end up paying for them later, right? The aftermath of not putting the correct emphasis on the right items in your dealership cost you in the long run. Sure, I see this happening all the time.
And sure, like as
there's
you said,
no Band-Aid for business. That should be our new phrase. There aren't Band-Aids in business. There's no quick fix. None of what we do is magic bullets. There's just people realize that in the beginning and people that don't.
Sure. And like you said, like I have the more affordable option of Street Smarts. That's the people that like literally they have a good process. They're just trying, they're making that attempt of like, I want to get bigger, better, but I already know process and everything else. Fine. That's for you. You don't have a process and everything else. You're 100% right. You need more help. Then you need to look at a hybrid, or you need to look at other things, because I have 3 solutions. They are for all types of dealers. But yes, if you're trying to start it, you're right. You have to put the emphasis on, if you don't have a good foundation and you need all the help and you think like, oh, I'll do it the more inexpensive way. Well, that may work for you. I'm not going to say it won't, but I will say, okay, you better make sure that you're making full commitment to it if you're going to do the more inexpensive option. If you're saying, I don't have the bandwidth or the drive, then you want someone to come in so that someone's going to do it right for you. Now, where I want to give AI some grace is this. I did see one company. Shout out to my guy, Braden at Dealer Surge. I don't like all parts of AI, but there was one thing that they did that I thought, again, a tool and something that is an issue in the industry. So he was surveying some dealers, and it was phone calls into a store, just phone traffic. And I know there's a national stat, call it, I don't know, 18%, I think is what he put up, but it might be a little higher, of missed phone calls, like where you don't get to them. Like the receptionist doesn't queue to them, or they leave them on hold too long or something like that. But it was a big number. Like, so,
I believe it. I would see this with Auto Trader all the time.
So with the phone call aspect of the AI, not that I'm a big fan of AI on phones, because let's get real, guys, banks have been doing this forever, and I want to strangle every AI component I have to deal with in a bank. But what it was interesting was it was very simple. It was machine learning. I'm pretty sure it was a machine learning one. Is it would answer the call, and then it would immediately get it to an extension so that at least the call got answered because of how many dropped calls it was going on, which from that aspect, I think that's a piece of AI that makes a lot of sense. Because if you're not getting the phone call, you're losing business. I mean, that's just simple.
That's demonstrative of exactly what I'm saying. It's a tool, but then you've got to do the hard work of getting your salespeople to respond to that. Now you need almost another person to help you manage all these missed calls.
But I think it's like that is if we don't get all the calls, right? Like, and this is what I said. He says, well, do you like this? And I said, it's AI. I'm not a big fan. I said, but why I gave it grace is if we answered all the calls, 4,000 calls come in for the month, and I'm just using that as
dollars.
And we answered them all. Now we know for sure how much business we're losing or how much we're gaining. If I miss 25% of my calls, I don't even know where I can grow because I'm missing 25% of my business.
Yes.
So do I think there's a place for it? Yes, but as a tool. Do I think it should be a communication tool right now? No. And I want to really back this up, guys, because I don't want you thinking like, oh, he's not into AI, I'm out. First off, there's a reason why there's no AI at this point that can effectively help you with buying cars. Because when you're buying a car, that conversation can never be scripted. It goes too many different ways. But two is if we depend on AI and we don't train our people now, we know we don't train our people now. Like, we don't have to sit there and talk about that. Well, I'm not talking about the 5% of the industry that actually does. I'm talking about the 95 that doesn't. If we don't train our people now, and then we put another tool in there that, let's say you're over 25 and don't know how to embrace fully, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to create a less intelligent, if you like to hear it straight, dumber individual that then when the customer gets to your store, they don't know what to do. They're sitting there pissing down their leg because they have no interaction skills. So think about that, guys, as you're enabling and creating your own dynamic problem of the in-store experience. So unless you are a store that is going to get AI and digital retailing, which again, another podcast, because that's also a tool that causes problems. But you are 100% online from start to finish and they never come in your store, you really should probably give some thought about what AI is doing, how it's positioned, and then who's managing, developing, and training people to both interact and then shift to in-store. And I can even give you a parallel where this makes a lot of sense. And then, Jackie, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Internet sales. Let's go back to way back in the day to 1999. And then we had that Y2K thing. The world was going to end. We made it through that. It was so close. And everything was going to come. And then internet really kind of started taking its storm to the auto industry. We already had online, but it really started to break through. And I remember the quote. It was from a Dodge store in the West Coast and said the internet's the devil. It was going to ruin the market. And that was hilarious because it's never been more fruitful. However, it did kind of ruin the market because it educated people and now we sell cars for cheaper, so on and so forth. When you trained internet salespeople and it was like handle the leads and do the BDC and do all this and everything else, then when I got to the store, you didn't train both sides of it. Now, the stores that got it, as Jackie says, the winners, they didn't have an internet department. They had everybody handle everything. Why? Because if you handle an internet lead, it should look the same exact thing in your store. So they had everyone did everything and it went in a rotation. And guess what? Those stores, they struggled at first and then they got better. It's kind of like the story of the buffalo and the cow, right? Buffalo runs towards the storm, cow runs away from it. How long do you stay in the storm? But they got with it because they understood I have to have people that understand both sides of it. And now we've got to a point where internet leads or internet sales, if you're still that dealer that thinks internet sales and walk-ins are two different things, I also have some really nice oceanfront property in Arizona for you guys. Okay. Real nice, cheap. Okay. And this is why there's no customer. Okay. When I say no, fine, I'll give you 1% that does not shop online before they come into a store. So internet now is your sales rhythm. But you think about with AI, You really think that people are never going to have to talk to someone when they come in the store? Like, it's just going to be one of those things you pick up your car? So you have to think about the development, the training, the understanding, and the engagement. The person-to-person engagement behind that is like, if you make them lazy and you don't use your skills, that's going to cause wait a minute. It already did. We called it COVID. We don't even have salespeople anymore. We had order takers, and now no one knows how to talk to anyone. What do you think, Jackie?
Well, and I would actually say when you're selling cars online, and I have stores, right? Small markets who are killing it out there. They have to make up for not having the face-to-face. So I would actually argue you need more out of your people to be effective with your e-commerce sales and your online business.
Sure. 100% agree.
I would say too, because you are talking about a race to the bottom. And I think when we had transparency with the internet and everybody can see pricing and whatever, I will tell you, there's still a large portion of the market. And these are kind of my customers, or what I try to work my clients and what I try to work them towards. My clients are not the cheapest by far. I would argue they're the most expensive, but they offer something their competitors don't offer, agnostic of any tools, any online, anything. And that is high levels, extremely high levels of service. And customers will pay for that. They will pay for great service, trust, transparency, delivery. They will pay to not have to worry about if they're going to get a lemon. They will pay to have the vehicle delivered. They will pay to have a good relationship. There are buyers that are not just cost conscious or usually it's cheap, fast, good, right? There's the three pinnacles. And we've talked about this before of doing any kind of a service or product transaction, right? You can usually get 2 out of the 3. If you get all 3, that's great. But there are a number of consumers who do not shop on price as their primary focus. They would rather have, some of them want things quicker. Some of them would like custom offering. Some of them would they want the service, because it doesn't matter. That cheap car ends up costing you. If you don't know what happened to it, if you don't have the service records, if your salesperson isn't being honest with you and actually servicing the account. That being said, you talked about something else I also want to touch on as we're discussing adaptation of technology and AI. And that is, you are only as good as the information that you are utilizing and putting into your systems. So when you talk about missing, say, 20 calls that come into the dealership because you're not using an AI tool or people inside the store to work that, not only are you missing potential sales, you're missing trades, you're missing training opportunities, you're missing so much more. I mean, that's like a function of your business. And I actually partner with a company called Accounted For. And they go into companies and help them know their numbers from a top of tree standpoint, because so many companies don't even know their basic financials, and it hinders them in so many other ways. It becomes a domino effect. You absolutely need to know your numbers, have all the information in your systems, and you can't possibly know your numbers if things are an afterthought and you're just trying to get through your day and you're ignoring some waste in your business, or you perceive it to be waste. It's actually really valuable. And so, to your point, your people are your biggest asset. They're going to outlive all the technology. This idea, at least as we sit today, right? This idea that people don't have to work as hard, that they're order takers. Sure. I think the most successful people are capitalizing on their folks. They're using the technology as a tool, but they are not cutting corners, and their people are not cutting corners, and they are actually overcompensating for this lack of face-to-face. It is like 10 extra steps to establish a relationship with a customer that you met online. But the companies and dealers that are successful are doing these things. I have a group in a small town outside of Toledo. I mean, they are doing full walk around videos and sales videos for their online customers, custom videos to interact with them. They're doing FaceTime. They are using technology and putting in the work to bridge that client gap.
Sure.
And so I would say, I think that's the trap. It's going to be sinkers and swimmers, and whether or not you decide you're going to swim is kind of up to you.
Yeah, and I think, like you just said, sinkers or swimmers, right? So we can wrap that all back into, the turnover of the industry, right? Is if you don't train and develop, then you're going to be stuck in that sinkers or swimmers, right? You'll have no middle area because you don't do any development. So you'll actually potentially, I won't say it happens, right? Because some people will figure it out, because they always do, winners do, is that you will have it to where your turnover will actually get worse because you don't have the people that can adaptate to the technology, or you're just not giving them the right insight. And then that creates a dynamic issue for your business, which I would never want to see. So you have to ask yourself, like, in 2025, what is the plan of making sure that we invest in our people and put them in the right position? And you think about it like this: COVID and hurricanes and tornadoes and economies and recessions. I don't know on the East Coast, but I would imagine you guys have your own version of this when I bring the store up. Yeah. But when we talk about service and paying more for something, there's this store on the West Coast, Nordstrom's. So you have Nordstrom Rack, which is like everything that was like the last year style, and they're getting out. But you have Nordstrom's, and and it's expensive. There ain't anything cheap in that store.
I love where you're going with this, Darrell.
So
I'm a huge fan.
There's all about their service. Model. It's all about the service and all about when you walk in and the ambiance and everything. It's just everything when you walk in. And I was just telling my son
about return policy is a
return policy. But I was just telling my son about this. They sell Jerry Garcia ties. Now, guys, we can get Jerry Garcia ties anywhere. You can buy them anywhere. And it's probably a $25 to $35 tie, give or take. You go to Nordstrom, that's like a $70 tie. And it's the same damn tie. I don't even understand what's happening. But if that doesn't work for you for a parallel, if you were on social media, I don't know which one, TikTok, Instagram, something like that. But Curtis, why can't I remember his last name? Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent. He was talking about a bottle of water. He did this meme about a bottle of water. And he says, why is a bottle of water? And I think it was like just like a Aquafina bottle of water. If you go buy it in like the like lower income neighborhoods, it's $1. You go buy it in Beverly Hills, it's $5. You buy it on a plane, it's $8. And he says it's the same bottle of water. It's all based on the supply and demand, the expectations of what you get, and the service it comes with. And so when you think about that, is people pay more for stuff all the time in everyday life. It's all about the service and everything else. And I can give you these parallels all day long. Winco to Rayleigh's. And
I'd argue too, they'll pay more when they're feeling the pain. If you're at an amusement park and it's 100 degrees out, I'll pay $20 for water.
As many as I can get of them.
You got to create that value. You got to, find the pain.
Value.
How bad is the car that they're in now? Is it falling apart? Can they drive it? Is it at the shop? I mean, you can create demand too, based on people's.
When you say that, you can create demand. Like when I deal with acquisition, is we always say we want to devalue the car. No, you want to evaluate the car, right? And if you teach your people how to have a presentation, so the one thing you can get either from me or my academy is, I will say it, and I will challenge anyone in the country. I have the single best walk around for evaluation, because it's all based on psychology. I went to school, got a degree. Okay, I finally got to use it. It's fantastic. But I don't need to devalue anyone's car. I'm going to evaluate it with them. And is if we teach people how to do these things, I'm no longer selling anyone. I'm self-discovering, I'm creating conversation, which in turn, when I create that pain point or those triggers that get them to emotionally disconnect, guess what? Now they understand how much it's going to cost them. Now they understand what they're really in. That's because you've allowed them to self-discover. I didn't have to attack anyone.
That's right. Listen, there's salespeople out there selling on price when their customer does not value price as their foremost decision maker. If you do not know your customer and you are not relating to them because you don't know what they're all about, you're leaving opportunity on the table in the form of dollars, in the form of product in the form of a long-time relationship. I mean, we every day, because it's hard to do these things, right?
Sure.
But it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, not only is it worth it too, is it's, again, so we've talked about like how dealers give up control rather than wanting to control, right? Even though they say they want to, right? And we've talked about our people, which I think are huge, and culture. But it's like, you have to ask yourself, especially the smaller, we'll call it 1 or 2 rooftop stores, not these big groups, the Lithias and the Penske's, because let's get real. I mean, you do start getting so big that it's hard to fail as a company. You might have 1 store failing, but your smaller operations is, if you're not looking at how you create business, forget about today. Your people are how you create business long term. If you're not looking at how you sustain that long-term business, it's only a matter of time till you're out, because that's where it's at. Is I never look at, so everything I do, I did we'll call it a rant a couple nights ago, and it was everything I'm doing for my business, Street Smarts and Smartwolf. I could, like, there's nothing I'm doing expecting results for next month. These are all things I'm doing for 6 months from now.
That's right.
I'm farming, I'm sowing. And because if I looked at today's business, I'm going to be more disappointed than I am hopeful, because that means every day I don't get a yes, I look at it as a no. No, I look at it as like, I don't need a yes every day, because I'm farming, because the yeses come when you put the right pieces in place.
Yeah.
With the automotive industry, and most industries actually, is they're like, oh, we need some business for today. No, like, once today starts, the business is foregone based on what I did 2-3 months ago. And we really need to have that mindset of like, who are we bringing in, or who do we hire, or who do we do, whatever you want to call it, to make sure we are future focused, right? Embrace the present. I'm not saying ignore the present, right? Embrace the present, but plan and develop to the future, so that the present every day can be the best it can be. Don't be surprised when you don't get the results, when you're not planning for the future.
I come into, you're reminding me that I've come into so many situations where owners are like, we're so busy. I don't know if you see this, Darrell. We're so busy. We need to hire people, but we don't have time to hire them because we're so busy covering the work that we should be hiring somebody to do. And they kick this can down the road. It reminds me of a TED Talk that I saw by an ER doctor. She goes, we triage. You come to the ER, you're green, yellow, red. And she was talking about how in organizations that respond to every event as though it is a red emergency, you are killing yourself. You're killing your people. You're burning people out. Not everything is a red emergency. Some things are yellow, some things are green, but they require your attention. You cannot ignore them, or you'll constantly be in this state or loop of like, I'm so busy, but I don't have time. And that's like a bad spot to be in,
Well, I think, though, that's also indicative of leadership. Well, the lack of training in leadership, but just leadership of, if we do that a lot, right? Of, we either go like fire drills and everything's a red, which is exhausting, right? And then everything's a priority and nothing's important.
Nothing's important. Right. Absolutely.
And so I think we do that to ourselves. But more importantly is, when we back burner things, the people that put everything like on green and only make like they do the exact opposite, is they're not comfortable either training, addressing, whatever it may be. So they leave it as like, oh, I'll get to it. Or I'm too busy doing something else, so this becomes non-important, because they're not comfortable addressing it, which, again, yes, for me, being uncomfortable is where I like to live. The more uncomfortable, the faster I work, the better I work, the more efficient I work. But that's not.
But you're comfortable being uncomfortable.
Sure, but we train our people to where, let's say, we always say that adage, get comfortable being uncomfortable. You won't hear me say this very often, but I actually think that is just something we say for effect. I'll be 100% honest, because some people can do it, some people can't. I think we need to say, if you're not comfortable being uncomfortable, then we need to train our people to be comfortable. In the sense of, we need to develop our people to be comfortable with the situations that are going to come at them. If you have 1 or 2 people that can be a you or me, where throw us into anything and give me 30 minutes and I'll figure this out, cool. But you're not going to find 100 those in your organization. You only need a couple of those. Then you need those guys, or you bring in the talent or the experts to develop your people to be comfortable in what's going to come at them by either role playing, game planning, process building, so that when it comes at them, they don't feel like they need to ignore it. They can face it head on because they have confidence.
They're prepared. They're prepared.
For
It's
sure.
the difference between going into an exam in school when you've studied for the test and you've practiced the questions versus you didn't show up to class and you have no idea what's on the exam.
I don't know.
People should be shifting right into action.
I wish I knew what you were talking about on the test. I fortunately had a photographic memory, so I never studied. But I'm sure that it was a struggle for some people. So
there you go.
Now, if she talked about writing an essay, oh boy, my papers look like a crime scene. There were so many red marks on those things. I could never do that. So, but no, Jackie, I want to thank you for coming on because listen, Jackie and I do. And listen, guys, when she says there's some things we don't agree on, we have spirited conversations. Don't you worry. And, but we don't try to convince each other. We just have different views on stuff. But Jackie is passionate. And there's three things that I want people to know about Jackie. One, her passion might actually make me look like I'm mellow. She goes at it and she goes at it full steam, and she doesn't like to lose, and she doesn't. Two, she works harder than probably 95% of the people I've ever met in my life. Because that's her path. Like, she wants you to win because it's not really about just the money, right? Obviously everyone wants to make money, but it's about like, I helped that person. She has that care and consideration in there. And three, when you think about it, of like the people you want to put on your team and those polarizing, those magnetisms that like people like, her energy is infectious, and not in, like in a bad way where people say like, oh, that can hurt. No. Everyone that's around her is like, man, they're just in a good mood. It's just one of those things. Like, now, the thing that you need to know, just like me, that's where we're similar. Oh, no. There will be no excuses with us. There will be none of this nonsense of you saying, well, no. We're going to hold you to a standard that is probably higher than you expect, because I'm not going to lower my bar, and neither is Jackie, so that you can feel comfortable. We're going to get you to where you want to be, right? Think of it like a gym trainer. Okay, we're not going to help you lose 1 pound. We're going to help you lose all 20. And that's what we do, because we want you to feel great, not good, great when it's done. So Jackie, I want to thank you so much for coming on, guys. If you are over there in the East Coast, right, you guys should definitely reach out to 5-3 Consulting, because if you want somebody, energy, drive, process, she does some things that I don't even get in the gamut of. Because it's just not my bag. She's the person that's going to come in there, and you're going to see an immediate change in a good way. And I think that's what we need. 2025 is one of those years where, with the right focus and attention and bringing in the right people into your organization, I think 2025 will be the perfect year to reset foundations to where no matter what happens in the economy, you can take control. Any burning desires, final thoughts, Jackie, before we wrap things up?
I just want to say thank you. This was so much fun, and thank you for your kind words. But I agree. I think something I want to leave on is that you don't have to make concessions. Darrell's absolutely right. Him and I are so upbeat, but we don't BS with people about the change that's needed to be made. But I would definitely say, as consultants, we're not going to beat people down. We're big on motivating. We're big on inspiring and working hard. We don't cut corners. But I do believe you can have both, right? You can have motivated workforces that also, get it done and produce. I don't think they have to be agnostic, but yeah, we're not in the business of fear-led or fear-mongering leadership. So, I think that makes us unique. But also a powerhouse. And it's been a pleasure. I hope we can do this again. If people have questions or follow-up, give us your feedback for the next podcast, because I'd love to hear, what's really keeping people up at night on their end that maybe we didn't cover this time.
Sure. So, guys, as you guys heard it, we took it to the streets yet again with Jackie Giammara. And guys, when you guys see this podcast, please like, share, repost, and subscribe to the podcast and channel, because we want to obviously grow the following. But more importantly, all trolls are welcome. So if we did something wrong, you disagree, we said something wrong, okay, we welcome all the voices here on Street Smarts, because that's the real truth and unfiltered conversations. Jackie, stay with me for just a second.